It was 1958 when Dr. Garrett Allen at Stanford started discovering the risks of contamination in blood. And over the next 20 or 30 years, he spent his time trying to persuade people that those who had commercial blood companies probably knew early, and certainly knew later on, that 1 in 7 of those from whom they were taking donations were at high risk of contamination. It wasn't until 1991 that Crown immunity was lifted from the Blood Products Laboratory. If people look at the taintedblood.info website, they'll see the chronology, which is pretty accurate and very useful. That doesn't solve the problem which the government and members of parliament and those affected are facing at the moment. I want to make the proposal that although the National Health Service should be treating people, dealing with the compensation and trying to make up for the costs to those who are affected should come away from the Department of Health and should be held by the Cabinet Office and the Treasury together. I think that's the only way of solving the problem of Scotland having to deal with people who are contaminated, who are affected, determined by where they got the infection rather than what their situation actually is and where they live. And it seems to me if we're going to get a national approach which recognises the Scottish Parliament and the Scottish Health Service's autonomy, but also treats people fairly, we're going to have to find a way of getting the non-health aspects away from the departments of health. I would ask government to consider whether there's some way of doing that effectively. Suggestions put to me, moving on to how people should be treated, I've got a message here from someone who's talking in effect on behalf of the nearly 200 co-infected people and the 2,220 mono-infected Hep C stage 1 victims, that here's some words directly, under the heading, "Now about the way they're blackmailing us over the drugs. I and every other haemophiliac have never paid for our Factor VIII. I've never paid for any of my HIV antiviral drugs, and my other prescription charges are covered by a prepayment certificate. My blood tests, ultrasound scans, fibre scans, and all my appointments are covered by the NHS. So why would they even consider asking us if we think the money should come out of the additional £100 million they've offered as financial help? And the answer to that, it shouldn't. And by the way, for those to whom what government are consulting at the moment would lead to a reduction in income, I think government certainly should say they need to be red-circled, that their money remains the way it is and no one should have their money reduced as a result of changes. We're trying to extend help to people, not reduce help to people. I then turn, if I may, again this is a direct quote, "Co-infected haemophiliacs need a voice in the debate. We are so few left, dealing with 2 viruses, which, as you know, increased complications. We need to be as respected and remembered, as are the Scottish haemophiliacs, in the midst of all the mono-Hep C victims. Being co-infected with HIV/AIDS and hepatitis C is the equivalent of second-stage hepatitis C, but at the top end, where someone has received a liver transplant, has limited life expectancy, and has to take medication every day for the rest of their lives or die. The co-infected person also has the additional problems of having the illnesses both these viruses can cause, even to the point where doctors cannot tell which virus is causing the problem. On top of this, we have the lifelong secrecy and stigma attached to HIV/AIDS virus. It seems to me that we've got to say to government, you may be trying more now than governments have tried before, but it's not appropriate, and it's not appropriate for Department of Health ministers to have to balance this against other treatments. It must come out of the Department of Health so that the money can go properly to those who have suffered because we made mistakes, the American blood companies made mistakes, and we need to recognise that. I'm not dealing about the liability, I'm trying to deal about what actually should happen now. As it happens, the first person in my family to take an AIDS test was my mother, who had had a serious operation, had lots of blood, and the second was my wife, who received 8 units in 1975 when this issue started coming forward. I have my blood tested for HIV, AIDS and HEP every 10 weeks as a blood donor. I only wish that we'd remembered what Richard Titmuss had said in The Gift Relationship, the book about giving blood, that actually we do it for free. We don't know who's going to benefit. The people who benefit don't know where it comes from, but at least it comes from people who actually have been tested to make sure it's safe that our blood can be passed on.